Now, when I visited this place, it was about a 6 hour, 7 hour drive away from where I lived. So we were there on holiday. It actually turns out that it's pretty much just down the road from us. It's no more than a sort of a 45-minute drive at the moment to an hour. So it's pretty local to us now, although it's been all closed down through the COVID times. So I need to go back and see it soon. In fact, I've actually got a great idea of doing a Tights and Mites field trip, which would start at the museum with some of our collection, and it would go just down the road to begin with to Chirk Canal Tunnel, which we'll talk about later. In fact, we took Diane there the other day, and then it would finish up at this place, Seigan Copper Mine. It's in Wales. It's in the middle of Snowdonia. It's actually pretty much right in the middle of Snowdonia, next to the famous Mount Snowdon. And Seigan copper mines, well, there they are. They literally get carved into the side of the cliff, into the side of the mountain, and it's very sort of Indiana Jones-esque as you go crawling through. You see all the little cart rails on the bottom on the floor there. This was a copper mine. And so as you walk through, you see evidence of malachite. Malachite is the copper orite, the sort of bluey green kind of rock. And you walk through and you see some fantastic mining type of things. I mean, this was started, they think, mining at the time of the Romans, but it really became big during the Industrial Revolution into the Victorian times. It was a big business mining copper out of Seigan copper mines. And so you go crawling down through the tunnel, great colours, great thing. I mean, this is a few years back, as you can see. I'm looking a little bit younger there. And then you come across these things. Beautiful stalactites. Stalactites, the ones that hang down from the ceiling. Absolutely gorgeous. I mean, the picture doesn't really do it justice because you've got kind of your the mine is kind of lit up with lighting, artificial lighting as you walk through, and this is a beautiful, deep, well, copper color really. It's a beautiful, made out of iron, almost rust, and it's this wonderful orangey color as you go walking through these fantastic stalactites and stalagmites. I mean, you can see the iridescent sheen that is kind of coming off of them. Absolutely beautiful. And by the way, these are tunnels, these are caverns which are closed off. You can't walk in and get up close to these ones. So you look at some of the length of these stalactites, we're talking about stalactites here that are close to 6 feet in length. That's sort of just under 2 meters, about just over 1.5 meters if you're in your metric system. So these are pretty big stalactites. These are not little fiddly things like you find on the top of bridges. These are big stalactites indeed. And you have huge, great big stalactite formations, which are all over the wall of the mine. Huge, great big, beautiful veils. You see how they all join together, just all running down the side of the walls. And you have stalagmites. Stalactites hang down, stalagmites stick up off the floor. They're the ones that are built up. You can see some of the malachite, the copper ore behind it. And then you have these rust-made, these iron-made stalagmites. Again, this was right up the top of the ledge shelf, so you can't really get a perspective of size, but you're looking at something that's about 5 feet tall. These are pretty big stalactites and stalagmites. And then you start to see evidence like this. You see the electrical wiring, and you see how the stalactite formation has come down and has actually grown over the copper wire and the electrical wire. Interesting. Okay, it's actually building up little stalagmites on top of it. The wire is being used as a ledge, and it's completely covering and completely building up on top of it all of this stalactite material. And it's the same all the way through the tunnel. It's absolutely covered. Everywhere you look, it's covered over this electrical wire. Interesting stuff. Let's see if we can get some dates for the mine and, more importantly, for the copper wire. Well, here's what it says inside the mine. Notice the English section there. There are no natural caverns. The stalactite and stalagmite formations have grown since these mines were abandoned. There's approximately 850 feet of rock above, and the workings go below this level for possibly 150 feet. So in other words, these are all mines. These are not natural caverns. These have been carved out. So they can be dated. Of course, it very helpfully doesn't give us a date there. So I had to go find the curator. It's a privately owned place. He's got his own private museum with wonderful artifacts and all sorts of stuff in it. Went and found him, spoke to the curator, said, okay, can you tell me when were these mine workings abandoned? The answer, 1903. In other words, when I visited these caves were 114 years old. Ah, interesting. 114 years. And it produced these beautiful, great big stalactites and stalagmites. Some of them up to 8 feet tall, 6 foot tall, 5 foot tall, huge, great big veils that cascade down the side of the wall, all formed in just 114 years. Not millions of years, not even thousands of years, not even hundreds of years, really, 114 years. But remember that electrical wire. You see, I spoke to the curator and I said, okay, this electrical wire, when was that put in? And I kind of got more than I really bargained for, because he said, oh, well, it had clearly been a contentious issue, because the mine had been first opened up to the public in the 1980s. And he said, with all of the new wiring and stuff that came in, we had to rip out all the old stuff, and with health and safety, we had to put all the new stuff in. It was so expensive to get it all in, but we finally did it. And he finally gave me a date. The new electrics were fitted in the year 2000. 17 years. Just 17 years to build up entire stalagmites on top of the new electrical wiring. Stalactites hanging down from the electric wiring. All of that done in just 17 years. We're talking about a process here. And yes, that's the key. Stalactites, stalagmites, and we're going to try and delve a little bit further into what that process is later. But stalactites and stalagmite formation, it's got nothing to do with time, but everything to do with a process. Okay, let's take you to Essex in the UK. There's the United Kingdom. There's Essex down there, near Colchester. Whoops. Wheelie Bridge in near Colchester in Essex in the UK. We were staying here at a caravan park as a family holiday quite a few years ago, 2017 I think it was, and you can see this wonderful bridge. You can see my brother down there. You see, I actually ended up coming down and exploring this bridge because it had some rather interesting stalactites hanging from it. Yes, there I am, looking a lot younger than I am now. Including this rather large stalactite hanging from a drainage pipe. Quite chunky as well. It's a pretty big stalactite. It's a very thick stalactite. It's not a long, thin one. There's a lot of material there. But more importantly, we started doing some tests, making sure this is definitely calcium carbonate. We actually collected some samples. We took it back home to the lab. We did hydrochloric acid on it. It frothed and bubbled all over the place. There's no doubt about it. This is definitely calcium carbonate, the same material that you have making up cave stalactites and stalagmites. We found them in pretty much every single drainage pipe. And down on the floor, there was a little stalagmite, including this rather big one. Now, we visited this place again a few years later. In fact, last year we went to visit it, and we'll show you a little video in just a moment. But this had actually grown even bigger. But look at what was getting caught up inside of it. Look at what I'm pointing to. I'm staring in the sun there, which is why I've got that funny facial expression. Can you see the leaf? We have a permineralized, fossilized leaf. And yes, we've collected samples. Yes, we've broken them open. They're not just, some of them are just covered in a thin veneer of this calcium carbonate, but some of them, such as this leaf, have become fully impregnated. They're permineralized, they're trapped, they're preserved in every sense of the word. They are fossilized. Beautiful fossil leaves. Great big detail on them. Do some tests on the leaves. Definitely calcium carbonate. You can break them up. It's penetrated all the way through. Wheelie Bridge, built in 1930. What's the maximum age for these stalactites and stalagmites? Well, you can do the maths, but let me just actually give you a Bible verse before we have a little look at a video that we pulled together. Test all things, hold fast to what is good. You see, what we discovered here at Wheelie Bridge allowed us to go and do further testing, allowed us to go and do further checking. It really inspired a whole new branch of research at Jurassic Ark, something that I got to come and actually experience back in 2018 when I went to Jurassic Ark in Australia. But even better, there's some even more recent evidence that has come out of this exploring.
Welcome to Wheelie Bridge Caravan Park. Now, I stayed with here 5 years ago with my family on a sort of a half research, half family holiday trip, and we'd been driving in and out to the caravan park all week. And I'd noticed things like, well, it's called Wheelie Bridge because there's a bridge just behind us. It's the railway bridge because there's a station just over there for Wheelie Village. And we'd been driving in and out and in and out, and then one day, as we were driving underneath this bridge over here, I looked up and shouted, "Stop!" And Dad jumped out of his skin, and I had to peel him from the ceiling and tell him it's all right, there wasn't a major problem. I'd noticed something hanging from the bridge. Some stalactites, to be completely honest with you. I mean, if you come have a look over here, you can see the bridge. This bridge was part of the station. It was built in 1866. I came here 5 years ago, and I noticed some stalactites. Now, one thing you know for sure, if you look up the secular definition of stalactites, or you look up some secular research, then stalactites are supposed to take hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years to actually form. In fact, many people and critics of the Bible have actually used this as one of the biggest evidences against young earth creation and the Bible being true. And yet here on this bridge, just 150 years old when I first came here, 155 years old now, up here you can see some beautiful stalactites. There they are, the ones that I first spotted coming under the bridge and shouted about because I was so excited. Yes, people like me and John Mackay love geological things, and we love titan mites because when I first spotted these, we were right at the beginning of our titan mite journey. I mean, creation research has been involved in doing experiments with caves, experiments with limestone, experiments with stalactites and stalagmites for many years now. But way back at the beginning, we were all excited and we'd just noticed these, and it was absolutely fantastic. A bridge only 150 years old with stalactites growing out of them, and that makes one very important point. Stalactite formation has got nothing to do with time, but everything to do with a process. But you know, since then we've found much better stalactites than that. I mean, they're pretty little ones, they're pretty boring, but actually as I began to look closer at the bridge, I noticed a very special and very important extra little detail which sparked a whole new branch of research that we've been doing around the world, and that has everything to do with inside the tunnel, so I'm going to head inside now. And here it is. A bit wet in here, but just up there, look at that wonderful chunky stalactite coming out of the drainage pipes from the top of the railway tracks. I mean, it's a big chunky one. Normally these bridge tights, as we call them, are long and thin and slender, but this is big, it's chunky, it's got a lot of substance to it. In fact, this is one of the biggest and chunkiest bridge tights that we'd actually ever seen, and it makes that very important point. If you want to get a stalactite of that size, you need to have the right process. It's got nothing to do with time. And if you want to make a stalactite of that size in just 100, 150 years, you need to have the right process that can make it happen very, very quickly indeed. You don't need millions of years. But it made another interesting point, because what you've actually got here is these are the drainage pipes which collect all of the sludge and all of the gunk and all of the messy, oozy stuff from the top of the train tracks and brings it down and dumps it into this sort of river down here. It's the drainage pipes when it rains, and it collects all of that mulch. Now, we've been trying experiments at this point for the last 2 years at Creation Research, and we'd realised that mulch and bacteria and microbial stuff has actually got something very important to do with producing stalactites of this quality and of this speed. And so we actually were able to take this and began doing some more experiments with Creation Research. But the real thing which sparked everything else was not what was growing up there, but what was actually happening right down there. Now just look at this fabulous stalagmite. Tides hang down, mites come up, and this is huge. It's a good 5-6 feet across. It's pretty deep and thick as well, and it's got this beautiful rock solid calcium carbonate limestone stalagmite. As it's being dripped down and it's running down, it's producing this beautiful deep, rich colours. But also something else important. Have a look at what is going on up the back here. I mean, can you see where the leaves have blown into this area and they've got caught up and they're now absolutely rock solid? These are petrified leaves. For all intents and purposes, they are fossils. They have been completely engulfed, completely impenetrated, and completely turned into stone, preserved in the limestone. These are per-mineralized leaves. The same kind of fossilization process that happens with things like dinosaur bones and other fossil leaves that we find all around the world. So, first point, if you want to get this, you need the right process. But does that process happen quickly? Does that process take millions of years? Well, we know for sure the fact that you've got leaves here means that these leaves were buried and trapped and preserved before they had time to rot and decay. I mean, you've got loads of gunk and mulch and rotting leaves all around us here, and you have to have the right process in order to trap it. But one other thing, if you want to actually trap these leaves, they get blown into this tunnel and they need to be trapped and begun the fossilization process before they blow back out again. The right process has to be quick if you want to end up with fossil leaves. In fact, we were actually able to duplicate this research over in Australia and actually make our own leaf fossil making machine using our stalactite and stalagmite machines over there.